And how's it going? Welcome into the first ever live edition of Kolby's Corner, coming to you straight after Virginia Tech finished up fall camp. Practice number 4. I feel like it's already flying by, already into mini camp number 2. But yeah, hopefully just dive into a brief recap of practice and get some questions from everyone. So first off, after the rainy sort of mini camp day 2, it was a nice day in Blacksburg. Kind of random, kind of in the 60s, low 70s for fall camp. Actually kind of feels like fall for once, even though it's early August. But yeah, the media was able to go out there and see practices periods 1 through 7. So a lot of individual skill work, not a lot of team drills, but still got a nice little insight into some guys that you haven't seen before. Obviously, all the summer enrollees for freshmen, and obviously the transfers coming in later in the cycle, you hadn't seen them out there in spring before. So it was good to get those first look at those guys. And then jumping in just on the sideline immediately, you saw guys. Bud Foster was there. The athletic director, Whit Babcock, was there. A lot of really people plugged in. So that was good to see as well. I think the biggest takeaway, though, or one thing I may be surprised in the periods we got to saw that really stood out was true freshman Noah Chambers. This looks like someone who's going to have a really long career. Someone who at DeMatha Catholic, the school he came from, you're not allowed to early enroll. So for him to come in over the summer and physically just to be in the shape that he's in, wow, really impressive to see. And then him go through individual linebacker drills in front of Xavier Adebe, an All-American, a guy who's been in the league. Obviously, defensive coordinator Sam Sifkus, who's coached linebackers at the highest level, and see him go through that drill work as a guy who's only been on campus for a couple months. Really, really high upside. Another person, if you want to talk true freshman, that stood out was Sheldon Robinson in the same vein, someone who came in over the summer. We didn't see it all in spring. And that looks like a guy physically who's also got his body ready to go play at the next level. So those are two really good signs. Some other notes, starting off with the quarterback position, Kyron Drones. I think he had a really solid showing again. We talked to Pry after fall camp day number 1. We weren't out there, but he said he thought Kyron was very rhythmic and smooth and commanded the offense. And I think that stuff, we talked to JC Price after today, and he said he doesn't count those first practices where there's no pads on. Those don't really even count. So once they're still in uppers, only shoulder pads. We'll go full pads on Wednesday. We'll have a bunch of content over on VT Scoop on Wednesday. It's media day, but I thought Kyron looked solid in the individual work. You could really see the connection. I know he talked about it a lot at ACC kickoff with Donovan Green, saying he feels like he's already had a connection with him, but you can see that along with Aiden Green, a guy he's been thrown to for a while. They looked in sync. Behind him, Pop Watson, he was still ahead of Garrett Rangel today. Pop's added a lot to his frame. He's still frame-wise still on the smaller side, but he's added to his frame, and he has a confidence about him. I think Pry and everyone's touched on it, how much those games towards the end of last year helped in his development, but definitely he's carrying that confidence. Behind him was Garrett Rangel. First time seeing the Oklahoma State transfer spin it. Price said he had a whip on whatever the day we talked to him was. I guess that was Thursday. He has a whip. He can get it in the hole, and he kind of has a little bit of an awkward release motion, but he looked decent in sometimes, missed some guys here and there, but still getting adjusted. And then behind them, obviously, the two true freshman guys, Keldon Ryan was ahead of AJ Brand, but they kind of look like they just built on what they did in the spring. Now, I will say Keldon looks like frame-wise, I think AJ came into school early enrolling a little bit more developed frame-wise, but Keldon's definitely helped with that. And I think just across the board, just to spray it out there, a lot's been made of it. But Jarrett Ferguson, this entire team looks different from a year ago, just especially in the trenches, but at the skill positions. Talking to Benji Gosnell after practice, he's about the same weight, but probably a little heavier than he was last year fall camp. Also healthier, not having an off-season surgery. But he says he's carrying the weight so much differently. He used the term that last year he was at the same weight, but he looked like he was 8 months pregnant. And Ferguson got him feeling great. He says it's the best he's felt going into fall camp. So that's a small little note. Another on the skill positions on offense, a guy like Cam Selden, who obviously so much is made of him being that 5-star recruit. It was said earlier today by Bruce Feldman on the Freaks list. He ran 22.9 this offseason. Talking to Chance Wiggins earlier in the year, if you go back and watch that Kolby's Corner on the YouTube channel, Chance Wiggins said he ran against Cam Selden in track in high school, and he was by far the fastest athlete he's pretty much ever seen. So the dynamic ability he has, but transitioning from running back to wide receiver is tough. And you definitely saw that today, man. He had a couple really crisp routes that maybe weren't all the way there in the spring. It looks like he's put in a lot of work over the summer, technique-wise. And another guy there's been some smoke about coming out of ACC kickoff, it's Kai Heath. Really some legit flashes there. real twitchy. I mean, you got to have that gadget guy, and he can do a lot of things, man. Yeah, he's the type of guy where you couldn't even touch him in a phone booth. So that's a nice addition there. I mean, there's an embarrassment of riches in that wide receiver room. So much to shake out. Who really knows who's going to take that next step? But that's something to monitor. And then going to the defensive side of the ball, it's kind of what we expected with those top two safeties. The Rice transfer, Tyson Flowers. You can check out his Kolby's Corner interview also on the YouTube channel. And then Quentin Reddish led the group. But, I mean, so much has been made of Sam Stevkes' 3 high safety look. And that third safety next in line, obviously bringing in Isaiah Cash and Sherrod Koval, but that third safety looked like he was going to be the New Mexico transfer, Christian Ellis, ahead of them. And then IBM was still playing in the nickel. I didn't see much of Knowledge Harrell today, but I think he'll still be pretty firmly in that backup nickel spot. Jordan Bass, first time seeing him at safety. Didn't get to see much of him in individual period except in a tackling drill where Brent Pry was really, really hands-on, very vocal and hands-on. One of the most I've probably seen in his tenure here, but it was very, very plugged in and tuned into specific breaking through a block and getting to a tackle drill, and talked with Jordan Bass for probably a couple minutes right after he did his rep. JoJo Crim's another guy physically at that cornerback position. Unfortunately, with Josh Clark on the side doing individual work, looking like he's going to miss the whole season, someone's really going to have to step up in that cornerback room. And JoJo Crim looks like a guy who could really get after it as a freshman. Great ball skills, is absolute ball hawk. Definitely in the mix at corner. And then Ben Bell's another guy. We talked to Kamari Copeland after, and we'll get to him as well. But he missed part of spring in the spring game because of an elbow issue. He was still in the brace, but man, he moved well, and in that same tackling circuit had a good rep. And then because we were talking to Kamari Copeland after, and he said Ben Bell was a guy who had 30% pass rush win rate last year, which is insane. But then we talked to Kamari Copeland, and this is a guy, him and Kelvin Gilliam, you can loop them in. Both have grown in leadership. But, I mean, these guys look aggressive off the ball, bendy, twitch, and Copeland specifically, man, I think he is really prepped. He won the MVP of spring. He held the lunch pail for like 7 or 8 months. A guy who seems determined coming off a torn triceps injury to really show what he has in the tank. I don't know if enough people are talking about him just based on the small sample size that we saw. Some other notes, obviously we saw Sam Stevkes in the spring operate as a defensive coordinator at this level, but man, he is super involved. Really, all the minute things that you could let slip, especially in individual technique periods early in fall camp, really not worried about it. He's watching like a hawk every little thing. And I think that's trickled down to the position coaches as well, and then to the players, sort of holding everyone accountable, like no MAs, don't take a rep off. We're really holding each other accountable, talking about playing fast and reacting, not overthinking and just going after it. Some other personnel, I guess, just depth chart, general things. Jeremiah Coney got some run with the first team at running backs, which is really not surprising. That room's just so up in the air. Coney's the returning Stallsworth guy. Probably we talked to him at ACC kickoff. Every time you try and count him out, he's right there, doing something good. I think another guy who's quietly alongside Terry and Stewart, the Bowling Green transfer, Marcellus Hawkins. Man, he just does so many things, even in not even team drills that we're seeing, that just make you go, okay, he's got a little bit of burst. And then Braden Bennett might be dealing with a small little knee issue. I don't think it'll hamper him too much. It's got a really, I wouldn't say odd technique, just unconventional, where he runs rather upright. But, I mean, you cut on the tape, it's worked for him in the past, but he runs upright. But somehow he's still slippery and gets yards after contact and does his thing. So I think with that running back room, however that shakes out, is going to be really interesting. Along the O-line, just watching the live reps, even just inter squad with them going against each other, the foot speed and the technique growth between, we didn't see Kyle Altuner in the spring, but physically for him, but for especially Montavious Cunningham, a guy like Johnny Garrett, just seeing their footwork develop. A guy like Aiden Lynch, wow. Aiden Lynch, just watching some of the things he did today, I think he's going to be a really good player here wherever he ends up. But I think that's a guy who's really going to factor in this year. Could see some snaps here this season, and definitely going to factor into the two deep. I think that's someone that Matt Morris talked about, and you could definitely see why. That's a guy who could really, really compete and push, I think, to have quality depth there. Along the D-line, if you talk about that, some really good reps with Copeland and Kelvin Gilliam, as well as we talked in. Bell and Burgos split work. Burgos is a guy, we talked to Coach J.C. Price after, steady Eddie, someone who's been in the program, had another great offseason. and is just sort of doing that. And some other miscellaneous ones before we sort of wrap this up or get into some questions. Selden just looks fast, sort of touching on the 22.9 miles per hour. Rangel, he had some nice throws, but still definitely third behind Watson today, I would say. And then there's a lot of raw wide receiver talent, like we touched on. Cam Selden with the traits. Isaiah Spencer coming from Jackson State. But I don't know if I even touched on him, a guy who has all the raw athletic flashes and traits, but definitely needs some refinement along the route tree. Brody Adams was out there working. So that wide receiver room, running back room, some of those skill positions, you've got a lot of depth, but it's just seeing how it shakes out. I will say with the roster sort of shrinking a little bit, it was kind of crazy. It felt not like practice was empty, but you definitely feel like you were missing a couple bodies. Didn't see much from the specialists today. Obviously, new punter working in. So seeing how that works out. They usually go out there to the field way before the rest of the team is out there. So those were the main takeaways, I think, from the day. But yeah, so that was the first edition of Live Kolby's Corner. Looking forward to doing it again. Hopefully everyone enjoyed. And yeah,